Good morning. Welcome to this last plenary lecture of the PME conference. And it is with great pleasure that I am introducing to you Markku Hannula. And as an introducer, I did what any sensible, well-established colleague and friend, what I would do is Google him, of course. That's what we then do. And so I can tell you that Markku Hannula is a Finnish politician and the first vice president of the European Committee of the Regions and a long-standing member of the Finnish Parliament. And then, thank you. And then I discovered that if you Google Markku Hannula, Google corrects you and thinks you should be looking for Markku Markkula, apparently. I'll start over again and tell you what I know about Markku that is not on Google. Well, actually, I'm not going to tell you everything because something shouldn't be said again, like the fact that he tripped when he got elected for the presidency in Umeå and went to the stage, he fell. We're not going to mention that. We're not going to mention the memory I have when we went rafting in the Andes in Chile and we made sure, well actually Markku made sure that his partner would fall into the water. We're not going in that, okay. So let's go into more concrete things. Well, Markku has been always a visible and active member of the PME community ever since I can remember at least. I have a bad memory, but for as long as I can remember actually, but still. He's been a community member in the most true sense, always an active networker from the very beginning, engaging himself in the international committee quite early in his career, wearing the notorious Hawaii shirts ever since we had PME in Honolulu, so that's another one. And of course, a very engaged dancer in the PME dinners, we all know. I say engaged, I don't say good because it's not up to me to judge that. With my dancing skills, I can't judge that. So, okay. And not to forget, he is now a member of the very exclusive, prestigious club of PME ex-presidents. I'm very curious to find out what happens in their top secret meetings, actually. I've heard some complot theories, like they would be burning uncollected proceedings to get a bit of warm feeling after being president. So I don't know. QAnon, please inform us. We want to know what happens there. Okay, his self-confidence on the dance floor brings me to his research focus. For a long time of his career, he worked on affect in mathematics education, and he wrote some very influential works in the field, sometimes alone, the often cited paper in ESM on affect and attitudes towards mathematics, others with key figures in the field, mostly within the PME community, of course. Okay, and I think this focus on affect typifies Markku's concern for the mathematics learner, actually. A learner who experienced doubts, despair, boredom, anxiety, while solving mathematical problems, but also self-confidence, flow, aha moments, and so on, that need to be cherished and stimulated. And in recent years, Markku became active in research on eye tracking and combining that. And this will also be the focus of today's plenary lecture, the Math Track project, in which he uses mobile eye tracking to study attentional processes and emotions in collaborative problem solving in real classroom contexts. And not surprisingly, this is a very difficult endeavor. It comes with many challenges. And I think, again, this typifies Markku, not following the easy, most common pathways and paradigms, but finding his own way of doing things with a true concern for mathematics education and eager to find new insights. The project led to several really appealing studies so far, and I'm pretty confident much more is to follow, and I'm also very confident that Markku will tell you all about it in the coming hour. So Markku, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Wim, for a wonderful introduction. This talk wasn't easy for me to do. plenaries are typically based on decades of research, and I could have given that kind of plenary on mathematics-related affect, except that I gave it 4 years ago, PME42. So I really struggled putting together what I'm presenting here. It's because in my research on eye tracking, I feel still that I'm at the stage where I'm often stumbling in the dark rather than having a total vision of what's important and what's relevant. I will talk today here, and something that will not appear in the paper, I talk about why I think mind is more complex than we think. I think that's one of the biggest false assumptions in our work, that we assume many things about kind of intuitive understanding of mind, which I think are incorrect. And just reminding you of some of these issues that we should be more aware of. Okay, then we'll follow the kind of the basic underlying state of art about visual attention and visual interaction. Then I will talk about our research and some findings. Mostly I will be kind of citing 2 important research papers that we published. I will then move on to reflect what we have learned while stumbling in the dark, and finding some things and failing some things and then realizing something. And I will try to do some kind of setting of future directions in this kind of research. Future directions, what to do later. So, mind that we see happening in our research is typically the tip of the iceberg. And there's much that we don't see. There's kind of, person can themselves, through introspection, get a little bit deeper. There are some intuitions that influence what we do, although people don't get conscious awareness of these intuitions. Like there's this interesting study of gambling experiment where the research participants actually win money if they get right. And there's a complex set of rules when they win and when they lose that are not told beforehand. They learn through experience. And the studies actually show that there's visible signs in their skin conductance before they know which to choose. They start to sweat more when they're about to lose. But at that stage, they don't know, that doesn't improve their performance. So their subconscious is aware that this is a wrong choice, but their conscious decision-making is not at that point affected by it. So they are not able to listen to their intuition maybe fully. And then there are some processes that are so primitive, basic cognitive processes that they are totally inaccessible to cognitive, to conscious awareness. So cognitive processes that are so primitive level that we can't really analyze them ourselves. Often people think about mind as a Cartesian theater, that there's a central understanding, someone, small homunculus in our head, listening and watching what's happening and then giving orders. I think this is bonkers. It's something more like this. There are competing cognitive processes that try to overtake the attention over some other processes. And there are lots of examples. I told about the knowing without knowing, the gambling example. That same thing is shown with people who don't know Chinese. They are shown some Chinese characters. Then they are shown additional Chinese characters, and they tend to rate those that they've seen earlier more pretty or beautiful than those that are novel they hadn't seen before. But they are not able to recognize, beyond chance, which ones they have seen before and which not. So they know, but they don't know. And that's what we do a lot. There's studies on gesture and speech where people can use gestures that indicate correct understanding of concepts, but they are not able to talk about that. There's more striking results in brain damaged people who who can't say that they know something, but they, like where they have lesion between different parts of brain, for example, or something like that, they can't say what the image is, but they can write the name of the thing. They don't recognize it on one side, and that is related to speech, but they can write it. Or they are not able to say what the word train is, but they're able to, when they see that, they're able to draw it, a nice train. There's the kind of thing that happens in our mind that something triggers, like post-traumatic stress disorder is one example where things take over. We know also that's the field where I've been, emotion and cognition, that emotion biases cognitive processes. So the kind of emotion that is induced influences who is going to win the bar brawl and determine what's going to be done next. So to further illustrate this, I'm going to give you a visual attention test. Be prepared that after the test is on, there's one more slide where you should share the observations with the person sitting next to you. I just crafted this by myself, and I'm a little bit worried whether this works or not. This could be real fun, or it could be really humiliating, ridiculous thing to try. Let's see how it works. But anyway, I'm showing you some of my important friends for the time of being president. Here's me, the Vice President Wim, and the executive officers Yasmin, Annika, Arindam, and Jody. And I'm going to now switch the slides, and every slide switch, there's going to be 2 of these swapping places, and you should try to identify when happens more than just one of these swaps. Like more than 2 of us swap places. When does that happen? And there will be some sort of distractors as well. Are you ready? Okay, so turn to the person sitting next to you. What did you notice? Tell the person. Who would like to share what you noticed? Or maybe you.
Seneda, what did you notice?
Okay. That's an example of selective attention in a very brutal way. There's much more delicate processes to selective attention. There's wonderful video about selective attention. There are several, but one is excellent about group of students tossing, or 2 groups of students tossing balls, and you should try to follow how many times they toss the ball. I recommend going for it. I would have shown it here and not doing this my own stuff, but all these are copyrighted videos, so I can't show them in this kind of place. So we select what we attend to, and that's something that when we look at cars, we don't see people, or when we look at the weather, we don't see something else. There's the inattentional blindness. That's the video I was referring to, when you focus very sharply on something, and something can happen right there next to it, but you attending a certain feature of that, and you don't notice something else. What I showed you actually was a case of misdirection, very blatant one, directing your attention to the slides when something dirty happens elsewhere. But I want to also talk about seeing is believing in the sense that we often see what we expect to see. There's a wonderful experiment where a researcher or research assistant, is going to ask people from a map that, sorry, where are we? And then 2 assistants come with a door, and they kind of cross them, and the person changes who is holding the map. Half of the people don't notice that it's a different person they continue talking with, because they are focusing on something else. And they expect that it's the same person. You know, why would it be different person. My thinking of visual attention has been very much influenced by these two guys, Penn and Teller, magicians who have wonderful shows, and they tell a lot about how magic happens and how it's done. They don't really break the magician's code and tell the real secret, but they give enough that you know as a layperson a little bit how the magic works on stage and how people's attention can be fooled very easily. And I think similar processes happen in the classroom. Not that our attention is fooled, but students may attend to things that we don't want them to. And therefore, it's important to learn more about how attention works in school context. There's lots of work on multimodality. Communication is not just words. There's lots of other stuff. And especially the several visual channels in learning context highlight the importance of understanding how the teacher's attention and how the student's attention to different channels in the environment is directed and monitored, and how they control it. So why specifically eye? Telling some basic stuff. First, we see sharply only small area of our visual field. So it's roughly the size of the blue circle there. Or if you put your hand like that, your thumbnail is the area that you can observe sharply. Anything around it is blurred. There's no, for example, you can't recognize specific gestures of the hand unless you look at it. So you can't basically now study my facial expressions and my hand gestures at the same time. You have to alternate between the two to know what's going on. You can observe one at a time, but not both at the same time. So the gaze direction is firstly telling what one person is focusing on, what they are trying to perceive. And that happens also when the target is no longer there necessarily. You see it in classrooms when the teacher has erased the board and then makes reference to the figure that was there earlier, and both the teacher and students know what it's about, and they have a look at it when it's still no longer there. So something that research has shown, and this research is mostly based on laboratory experiments, almost exclusively people reading, a little bit of looking images more recently, but like the research is mainly on reading, and it shows that the gaze duration, how long we look at something, is an indicator for how long we process the information. So if the information is difficult to process, we tend to have longer gazes. But in real life condition, we use gaze also for action. Like if you want to draw something or manipulate some objects, you look it first. Your gaze does the work first, and then your hand. And it also happens that the gaze is before the action. So it's kind of telling our intentions in that sense, that we have a look at something before we do it. And that happens also sometimes that we have an intention, we kind of potential intention, but we don't actually do the action, and gaze is actually having more information there about something that we planned doing but didn't do. So gaze direction is, or generally eye movements are informing about attentional processes and intentions. It's important to distinguish between bottom-up and top-down attention. So top-down is something we consciously decide to focus on. You decided to focus on the screen during the visual attention test. Sometimes it's bottom-up, like if you hear noise from back of the room, you are likely to turn your head and watch it. If you see a large moving object in your peripheral vision, it catches your attention. You're probably going to have a fixation on it, so a short glance on it. Sorry. So some of the main concepts I already mentioned, fixations. They are the moments when eye remains still relatively still, there's micro movements, but basically it's still focusing on a point of small area, and these are typically 200 to 300 milliseconds. They can be a bit longer, up to 1 second, maybe a few seconds even, but they can be also somewhat shorter, like about 100 milliseconds or even less. Saccades are movements between these places, so it's a discrete process. Fixation, saccade, fixation, saccade, fixation. And there's no visual perception during saccade. That's confirmed by many research, so one of the basic things. So we don't see in between. Area of interest is what we call actually I've changed the presentation, we're probably not going to talk much about that. But it's used in research often, that's like research determined certain area that's under study. And dwell is something similar to fixation. It's several fixations on the same target. So the total time rather than separate fixations. How are these researched? So the classical one has been in the laboratory. The early ones included gluing something on your eye with a small stick and then studying that. But typically these days it's in laboratories, there's either something that you put your head into that follows your eyes, or you have a computer screen, and under computer screen there's an infrared bar that examines your eye movements and is kind of doing this kind of work for you. So something similar to the image on the right is typical research setting. We have a different one in our study, which is wearable. You put something like goggles on you, and that will have a small camera watching forward and other cameras watching your eye movements, and that's used for computing the gaze direction. Output of this information is typically the raw data is transformed into visual information. There's a screen image, what is in front of you, or the subject, research subject, and then some mark, in this case a red circle, that the student is looking at that location. You can summarize or synthesize these into heat maps, which is information from several fixations, taking into account their durations and showing a map like what is the hot area of attention. And then you can use different graphical representation, like here is from one of our studies. So a person examining two samples of birds and their differences and similarities, and the kind of the arrows tell transitions between different targets in that visual task. So what I'm claiming and why I'm doing this, that I see that eye tracking has potential for us to go deeper to the iceberg, to see some things that we are not really able to access with other approaches, really. There may be some others, but this is one method where we can go beyond the most obvious observations. Eye movement data is process data in nature. For every second, we have several data points. A minute of eye tracking data is rich already. We do our studies, we have half an hour, 1 hour of data. There's, thousands of data points per each subject in the study. These kind of process measures are interesting for analysis in that sense that not only they tell about things that happen over time, but eye tracking data has so many data points that we can process that and analyze that quantitatively. The process in time can be analyzed quantitatively. It's not mind reading. It's indication of something happening, and we have to make inferences. It's partial information. So we have to be always a little bit careful when we draw conclusions, but it's another channel. Some earlier findings in visual attention in problem solving. We know that experts focus on task-relevant features faster than novices. So that's one finding from the research. and they focus on more relevant. That's why you call them experts. They focus on the right thing and they focus on it fast. We see also that novices have more attentional transition, so their gaze is kind of searching things. They look here and there and everywhere. They use longer gaze sequences. They are not as efficient in doing the right thing. However, if a novice is focusing on the right thing, they are more likely to solve the task correctly. Eye movement in social context. First, it's important to know that there's high priority for other humans in natural situations. So humans tend to look at other humans a lot. Interesting finding that is relevant for why we're doing this in classrooms is that eye tracking research shows that when you have alternatives, that there's a video of a person doing or talking or something, and there's a person observing, and we do eye tracking with a person observing, the eye movement behavior is different from the situation where there's a live person doing exactly the same thing. The potential of interacting with the person, the fact that we know that the other person sees where we look, influences how our gaze behavior works. So any work that we do in laboratories with video material is not going to tell the same story as when we do it in a real setting with real people with respect to visual attention, eye movement behavior. When there's a moment of social interaction, gaze has many uses. So it's not just gathering information, it's not just looking to gather information. Eye contact is a powerful thing between students. Gaze can be used to initiate eye contact or to avoid eye contact. We can use gaze to communicate intended attention, what to focus on, and the audience will read our gaze. And we can use gaze to build joint attention. That happens often with gesturing. The person gesturing will direct their gaze at the gesture and then indicate to the other person that this is what we should both be looking at. Specifically, to teach a gaze, it's Nora McIntyre's studies that show quite clearly that teacher has two different types of gaze. One is information seeking, attentional gaze, and the other one is communicative. Teacher gaze kind of communicating information function to the students. Okay, moving on to our study, Math Track. We started in 2014 piloting some early data. We got Academy of Finland grant that allowed us to do more extensive work. And we used multiple mobile eye trackers in the Finnish grade 9 mathematics classroom. And I might here kind of emphasize how exceptional this setting is. There are a few studies that use more than one eye tracker, so generally. We found one study using four students working in a separate room and doing stuff there. But generally, it's mostly one. When they are going in the natural environment, there's typically one set of glasses used. Very few have more than that. If they have a social setting, it's laboratory where they can control the situation more. So extremely few research groups have done what we do. I don't know of any other doing actually what we do. Going into real classrooms with several sets of eye trackers and studying the eye movement behavior or the visual attention in the natural situation. We had three types of issues we wanted to look into. Knowing about students' working groups, how their visual attention or eye movement behavior there is related to their problem-solving performance and process. To learn about teacher attention was the second one. especially in this complex situation where students are split into groups, each group doing a different thing. And the teacher has to make sense which group needs my scaffolding and what kind of scaffolding should I provide. I think it's cognitively very, very challenging task, and it's based very much on visual observation. And we realized that because other people haven't done the stuff we do, we have to also develop methodological solutions. So the research design, we had 7 classes, some using paper and pencil, some using GeoGebra. 1 teacher, 4 students were wearing gaze tracking glasses. We visited each class twice. So first lesson was for calibration, and that all participants got used to the equipment, and then the second one was the actual data collection. They worked collaboratively on a mathematical problem. It was a complex one. They needed a lot of time. It was a challenging one. Most groups were stuck for a long time before finding the optimal solution or not finding the optimal solution by themselves at all. We used the same structure. First work alone, then with a friend, in group of 4, then the whole class, Matome. We used scripted teacher scaffolding, so we wanted them not to reveal the idea, but to give encouragement and ask questions that the teacher thinks would clarify students' thinking. And we had stimulated recall interviews with these 5 people after the lesson, so individual interviews. So our data was quite complex. We had 3 cameras looking from the outside, the top row, 5 eye tracking videos. Then we had either screenshots, screen capture videos or smart pen videos of their pen and paper work. So that was 13 video streams that were synchronized. On top of that, we had the stimulated recall interview and some surveys. Our hardware, it's something that's developed in an earlier project, and one of the developers worked in our project and built those equipment as part of the job in our project. The equipment is there, and there's a laptop in backpack that the person carries, and yeah, that collects the data. They look roughly like that. Some early observations in the beginning of the project. Teachers are very busy looking at things in the classroom. We first had looked at some student data, and then we got first set of teacher data we opened. And my first impression is this fast forward mode. It's really visual attention of the teacher requires a lot of transitions in the environment. And what we realized quite soon, starting to analyze this, frequent fixations on face. That's not surprising now afterwards, thinking what the kind of previous research has already said that humans in social interaction tend to focus a lot on other people's faces. We started with some qualitative case studies trying to make sense, and here's an example of teacher presenting on the board, our pilot studies, and the red dot is telling how the student is focusing on, first case, exactly what the teacher is kind of indicating. And the second one was really interesting because it was something we had to watch the video many, many times before we realized what was the clue that the student noticed that the teacher will be moving to the upper corner. Because we thought that it was kind of a psychic intuition, that we didn't see any evidence in the teacher behavior that she would be moving there next, but the student had noticed. Teacher had a very brief, less than half a second glance at that corner, a little bit earlier, and the student read that correctly. She's going to move there soon. Okay, this is one of the bigger papers that we produced, a more comprehensive study, and that's just one classroom with 3 students' data. One of the trackers was not working correctly, so we got data only from 3 students. And we talk about joint visual attention when they are solving this problem in group. Visual attention is something that they do with, they kind of use as a concept with young children learning with their parents and sharing this visual attention to the same object. So the child, parent, and the object. And that's something that happens in collaboration as well. You have something to work on. One person is looking at it, and the student peer is looking, oh, he's looking at this one, I'm looking at this too, and they know that they have a moment of joint attention on the same thing. We also quite early thought that in mathematics, that's not always the case typically. There are lots of cases where you have alternative examples of representations that are representing the same object. And they could be focusing on the same mathematical object, in this case, same type of solution, and looking at different papers, different physical drawings that have the same idea. And we call it joint representational attention when they are aware that they have this joint focus on the same thing, typically indicated by their verbal utterances that they know, they indicate to each other what they are talking about. And we found that this joint representational attention was actually quite common in mathematics context. So we found joint visual attention that is kind of the pure form, 49 instances in this one lesson, 3 students altogether, and 28 instances of joint representational attention. So that's, that's not uncommon. It's not the kind of the typical case, but it's fairly common case. We studied what happens or when these moments of joint visual attention take place. We studied the phases of the problem solving, understanding the problem, planning and exploring, implementing, verifying, and something that's relevant for collaborative work or group work is watching and listening. And what we see that when there was joint attention, verifying and watching and listening were the most common types of problem-solving activity at that time. And when there had been a moment of joint attention, we studied what kind of phase did the students move into after this moment of joint attention. And they were moving typically to verifying or watching and listening. We found that there was an interesting kind of difference. This is just one case. We shouldn't draw too strong conclusions, but it seemed that the joint attention moments were focusing on some of the different phases than the individual. So especially, I could turn it around and say that planning and exploring and implementing typically happened in solitude, and less often together with someone else. Whereas verifying especially, it's quite natural. Watching and listening, you can't do that very much alone. But verifying also is something that students tend to do often jointly. And I think this kind of indicates how we find that, yes, this joint attention tells something important about collaborative work or group processes in problem solving. So, just one of the early studies in this area, but I think definitely worth continuing exploring this area. Okay, another big important paper that came from our work, and I should maybe first emphasize that this is primarily my PhD student's work, Jessica Salminen-Saari. She's the first author and did most of the stuff there. And the other one is my now completed PhD student, Eva Haataja. She's been talking about eye tracking in PME conferences in Umeå. She was there, and she had an excellent thesis that was rewarded with praises. So part of her PhD thesis is this publication, 2021, and she studied interpersonal interaction between teacher-student. So there was this eye tracking data and another process data. So they had a joystick to mark the coding. So they were watching the video and coding it continuously. every second of the video was coded what is the teacher's interaction style. And it was on 2 dimensions. There's agency and communion. Communion refers to the warmth of interaction. And agency means how active or authoritative the teacher's role is in this interaction. And they were then recorded these kind of heat maps. And we see that most of the interaction happens in the top right corner, where it's warm interaction with high teacher agency. That's where most of the interaction happens. But there was also kind of exploration, what kind of interpersonal behavior style is related to different types of eye contact or efforts of eye contact between teacher and student. So having all moments when there was a teacher looking at student face and trying to establish an eye contact, whether successful or not, and I tracked students' efforts to start on eye contact, watching a teacher face and either successfully or non-successfully building an eye contact. So we have 4 types of there. Teacher gaze, teacher looking at student, student not returning an eye contact. Teacher started eye contact, where teacher first looks at student and then student returns the gaze and they establish an eye contact. Third one is student-centered, student started eye contact, so student first looks at the teacher, teacher returns to the gaze and an eye contact is established. And the last one is student gaze, where student looks at the teacher but the teacher is not responding to this gaze. And we see that a tendency here, again, this is not very extensive study. It's 3 classrooms, 3 teachers, but we see that students tend to initiate eye contact at moments when teacher is indicating warmth in communication. So high communion, warmth in communication, those are the moments when students are more likely to try to establish an eye contact. And on the other hand, during high teacher agency, or let's say teacher is initiating eye contact when they are having high agency, when they try to get a message across or try to be authoritative in the relation to the student or trying to influence the student process. Those are the moments when teacher typically is starting the eye contact. So now going to the reflect. How am I with the time?
Still 15 minutes.
Okay, that's very good. Yeah. I'm not going to use all the time, I think. So the lessons that we learned. So one thing that we realized in the process, that actually research ethics for our study were some things we had to learn more. And it relates more generally partly to the issues of video research not being really well addressed in the current research ethics frameworks. It's kind of a not well addressed, anyone doing a video research. So when we were kind of looking at it and thinking what we do, we realized that our video data is actually a kind of personality register which comes with lots of requirements about how we handle the data and what we can do with it and what we have to inform. It has personal information and sensitive such in it. Having the video, we may get at least some of the students, we get information about their racial or ethnic origin or religious beliefs. So we have to be really careful because this is personality register with sensitive data. Wonderful thing about all video research and eye tracking is also that you get so rich data that you can revisit the data with new questions in mind. But that poses a dilemma when you have the research design. How do you explicate these in a way that you are giving the participant enough information for them to give consent, that the ethics boards have enough information to do their review? It can't be too vague, because then it's non-informative, and it can't be too specific, because then you're tying your hands too much, and there's lots of things that you could do with the same data, again, which wouldn't burden schools and participants with going again to this process. It's definitely something that kind of, it would be ethical to use the data for additional questions, but it has to be still communicated in a way. So that was a dilemma that we struggled with. We also realized that it's possible, and actually we did see some instances where participant gaze was something that, no, we don't want to report that. I don't think the person would feel happy as reporting that thing happening. They don't expect what all we can see in the gaze. So we realized that we have to, it's our responsibility as researchers to be sensitive what we decide to analyze so that it's not something that the participants might feel uncomfortable later about if that is reported. That was an interesting case. That might be somewhat specific to Finland, but I think there's a more general message as well. New technology, in this case the eye tracking in research, might mean that, you know, established research ethics practices don't cover all the cases. In our case, it was that the ethics review board wasn't sure if this is violation of physical integrity or not, because they had not defined it in a way that would help them make a decision. So our study being reviewed by the ethics review board pushed the issue so that in the future revision of ethical guidelines in Finland, they redefined the intervention in physical integrity so that it's easier to define with this kind of lightweight technological interventions. If you're interested in the answer, the question is, it's not violating physical integrity if the person is able, without extensive work, to remove the equipment themselves. If they need help, or if it is complex, it's considered violation of physical integrity. I think that's a nice solution to the question. Okay, so in eye tracking research, but I think more generally what we can, and I think we should be doing more in education research, mathematics education research, I find it very fascinating to use the continuous data. In our case, eye tracking, we have the teacher interpersonal style. This kind of process data that is for longer duration allows us to study in interesting ways the dynamic processes in the classroom. And that's something we haven't been able to do quantitatively very much. We do have nice qualitative studies on that, but there's kind of potential for quantitative research on this type of continuous data. Especially for eye tracking, we see that there's lots of idiosyncrasy in the way gaze behavior works. Like some have, on average, clearly shorter fixations than some other people. This kind of differences. And therefore, either you have to have very many people research to get a statistical handling of this, or much more simple solution and much more efficient solution is to use within-person analysis. When we have for each minute several a few hundred data points, we can easily pick from the lesson certain types of events that are repeated and analyze, or let's say 2 types of things that are happening and make comparison within person in 2 different conditions. And I think that's an efficient way of using this type of data. Eye tracking data definitely, but also some other data that has lots of data points and that has lots of individual idiosyncrasy in how it works. I think brain scanning data is another one, but skin conductance data, some physiological measures. There's lots of this type of data where this approach, going for within-person analysis across situations, is much more efficient than trying to compare different individuals or different groups of individuals. So I think, yeah, definitely we're going to continue eye tracking in natural learning contexts. I already established a little bit discussions about maybe some people who are doing with big geometry, geometry in schools, large scale. That could be a very fruitful approach to look into with visual attention when you either outdoors or inside class with larger constructions, how the visual attention is with larger geometrical objects or larger figures, how you kind of do this. So anyway, this kind of work with eye tracking in natural context, yes, it's worth continuing. And it doesn't make sense to do this mobile eye tracking if you can do it also in laboratory. Laboratory, you have so many more tools for data analysis, for controlling things. If you can do it in laboratory, do it. But if you want to study social interaction in classrooms, it's very difficult to do that in laboratory. That's definitely one thing. And if you want to study outdoor education, math trails or something like that, you can't move that into laboratory. So there's interesting topics to look into. And definitely the joint visual attention and joint representational attention is something that seems highly relevant to group processes, and that's worth continuing. Some things we haven't done, and maybe it doesn't fit us to do it, but yeah, we have the equipment. We'll come and collect data in Finland. Eye movements are those students whose attention deviates from average. So affective disorders, high level of anxiety, math anxiety, for example. Affective disorders bias attention. So maybe it would be interesting to see how anxious students' attention behaves differently in classrooms than average students. Then people with attention disorder, hyperactivity, or lack of executive control, or belonging to the autism spectrum, their attention is, from laboratory experience, we know that their attention is different from normal population. But they have been mostly studied in laboratory conditions. And the practice with these students, the tendency is to integrate them into normal classrooms. How does that situation suit them? If they are having difficulty with attentional processes, are they able to handle the richness of visual channels and the impact of that on their thinking? So these groups would be very important to study in their natural integrated classrooms, and to see, is there something in the attentional processes that needs more attention from the researchers and practitioners. I could show you one video mainly because just, okay, I'll show the video because it shows some samples of data. If you got curious about what is the data, so here are some examples of how the eye tracking data looks like, and some of these are from our study with mobile eye trackers, and you can see a little bit of the equipment. It's just 1 minute.
Recently, eye tracking research has been taken from laboratories into ecologically valid contexts. New mobile devices allow us to study learning in classrooms and even outdoors. This shift requires developing new methods and rethinking our research questions and research designs. Mobile eye tracking allows research on students interacting with their learning environment, with each other and with their teacher. ITAIL team members have developed new measures and data analytics to study, for example, joint visual attention. Such new methods all too often use specific hardware or data formats and require knowledge of particular software. ITAIL will polish these into more user-friendly packages that automate laborious cases of work. New methods allow addressing new research questions. ITAIL will outline a research agenda for future eye tracking in the wild.
So you should. So, thank you. I'm looking forward to the reaction.
Thank you. When we entered the room, some people were wondering why Markku wasn't wearing a Hawaii shirt. I think now you know I don't own one, so we had to fine-tune our matching clothing, and that's the reason. Okay, we have a wonderful reactor for Markku's plenary. So thank you, Markku, for that. Very good job. Christina Sabina, and I know her very well as a very highly appreciated board member of Educational Studies in Mathematics. And wonderfully, besides that, she still has time to be an associate professor at the University of Torino. So, and I noted some keywords that make clear why she's the ideal reactor: multimodality, semiotics, argumentation, technology, and attitudes and emotions. So, Christina, I'm not taking more time. It's up for you for the reaction.
Thank you, Wim, for this kind introduction, and also I wish to thank the IPC for involving me as a reactor to this plenary. I also want to thank Markku for complementing the written paper with more information on the rationale of the study, on the theoretical foundations, and also some results. Next time we meet, I will comment on this part, but today I will stick, of course, to the written material. I will highlight some aspects that, in my view, are crucial in this kind of research and in your research in particular. And the first one is the fact that it addresses teaching and learning as processes rather than outcomes. And this is related to the need to observe such processes and to develop adequate tools and lenses to analyze them. I like to quote, to recall here a quotation from the opening address of PME1 going back to 1977, so by Hans Freudenthal, and I'm going to read it. You need a strategy of observing, a highly sophisticated strategy, but which can be expressed in one principle. Look and listen with an open mind and have the courage to notice and to report events that most people would consider as too silly to be noticed and to be reported. There might be a minority who can appreciate them, and this minority will be right. So your study brought a lot of methodological innovation, and if we look at the history of science, or even the history of mathematics education, we can see that the technological development has had a strong impact on how we collect the data, from the first audio recording to now the most sophisticated technology like eye tracking. And starting indeed from new observation tools, then later, I would say temporarily later, new theoretical development came, and also together with new methods and lenses for analysis. To give an example for another field which I'm familiar with, the gesture studies. So the focus on gesture developed, let's say in the 80s, starting from the 80s, when first video cameras became possible to linguistic researchers that were interested in the language only. Then new phenomena could arise, and afterwards these phenomena gestures were theorized and different theorizations, and nowadays there is a journal, there are many journals on that, and it has entered even other fields like mathematics education. But having these kind of technologies is sometimes scary, because you get lots of data, no? Even with one video camera and one eye tracker, you get really thousands of data, and you had in the project so many of them, trackers and also video cameras. So I think that really one strong point in the Math Track project is that you started to develop, and you offer to the community new methodological tools. For instance, the use of visual markers to identify gaze targets automatically, because we cannot spend hours and hours, even if PhD students cannot do that, spend hours and hours for 2 minutes of video, and then when do they write the thesis? But then a question, many questions arise, but I just mentioned one of them. What about gazing in the void? Why I do ask this? Because, for instance, in gesture, and also in gesture in mathematics education, you can observe that the gestures in the air, so pointing, what's called abstract pointing, is not pointing in the void, in nothing, but the space acquires significance that may impact on the mathematic reasoning. And I wonder if this may be the case with gazes. And I think it's a challenge to seize this, because then you cannot use visual markers. But this is so the question. Another methodological innovation that you introduced, maybe you didn't mention this today, but the scanning signature. So the fact that information from hundreds of I'm ready, I prepare to read what it is. Information from hundreds of fixations is synthesized in patterns between the nodes that in your research represent different solutions to a problem. So this is what I would call a diachronic analysis. So an analysis of a process, at a micro level, a process that develops in time, and you focus on some aspects as time goes on. And so I think that many questions can be related to this kind of diachronic analysis using eye tracking. For instance, just one, because the research focused on non-routine problems. So the question is about, do data from innovative methods you introduced and developed automized analysis may help in recognizing some significant features of good or bad problem solvers? In eye tracking studies, the main difference, in psychologists, experts and novice, which is different from good and bad problem solvers. This was the question. But in your research, you can focus with the eye tracking, not only on diachronic, so what happens developing in time, but also what happens at the same moment, because you have all these equipment with different students, even the teacher, so you can, and you did analyze gaze synchrony as a measure for joint attention and even joint representational attention. I will not comment on this today, but I think that this idea of joint representational attention is really interesting, and between students and teachers. Myself, also other colleagues I work with in the University of Torino, we could see that even when we were focusing on gestures only, on gestures and words, adopting a semiotic approach where many different kinds of signs are analyzed in their interrelationships, you can see here two pictures from a graduate course, undergraduate course, and from secondary school, where students are gazing in the first one. Okay, we use really a naive, now after your eye tracking, but naive intuition, they are gazing in the same place, or in the second picture, so the one to your left, the student and the teacher are having eye contact. But then, if we look, we can see also a kind of gesture coordination between two students while they are gazing at the same place. Or, in the other picture, we have, in this social work, also gesture synchrony, but with another students being involved. So, this may be, a lot of issues and questions may be asked from observing these phenomena that could be considered too silly to be noticed and to be reported. But I don't agree with this, of course. And in your research, you focusing on student-teacher interaction, introduce the distinction between cognitive scaffolding and affective scaffolding. So, with reference to this distinction, do you think that may student-teacher gaze synchrony have a role in scaffolding processes? Then there is another question. It's not written here. That with this conscious and unconscious dimension that you brought to the fore today. So, because gaze is not conscious, this is an issue to be maybe theorized more, but as gesture studies, if the gain effect is that it's unconscious, so it's effortless, then how can we reinvest this like in teacher education, where we needed to have conscious actions? So I think this tension, maybe it's not the next step in research, but in the horizon, I think it's important to consider also. Then, of course, this question can be made more detailed. Gaze when students are gazing at each other or when they are gazing at the same mathematical sign. So, my final comment is prompted by looking to the future and reflecting on what kind of possibility and needs these new technological tools bring to the fore. And I do have my little experiment, the visual test for you also. And so this is the test. What do you see?
Terrible.
And so I guess now we don't have time because I have less than 1 minute. But some of you saw like a stain, some of you saw a hat, some of you, I don't know if some of you saw an elephant in the hat, some of you recognize that this is from a very famous French novel, The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. So the issue here is drawing from a phenomenological perspective, and the quotation is from a very famous mathematician that taught in MIT philosophical issues related to mathematics. There is not such a thing as true seeing, there is only seeing as. So, I think that if we, as a researcher or your group is going to integrate this kind of technology and that focuses on gaze, we need to further clarify the relation between gaze, looking, and other processing, gazing and other processing, like looking at, seeing, focusing, and their relation to sense making, and I would add the perceiving in this relation, but this is already a theorizing step. And finally, the relation to mathematical thinking. Then, my last slide, I will read because I don't want to make mistakes here. So my final word is to thank Markku and Hannula for contributing with such an innovative project to offer inspiring insights and open our researchers' eyes on new methodological possibilities. Echoing Freudenthal's words, this opportunity may impact, I bet, not just a minority of us, but indeed our entire community. So, thank you.
Thank you, Christina. There would be two possible answers, and thorough answering to that reaction would take too long. So I just say thank you, and I really appreciate you linked my work to Freudenthal.
Okay, this leaves us some time for questions, ideas, reflections from the audience. Well, it's not like we stayed up until 2 o'clock this night, so we should be... No reactions now? It has to sink in, I understand. Do you have questions for the audience, Markku?
Well, as I said, I already had difficulty putting this paper and presentation together, so I can't really think anything new now at the spot.
Okay. Oh, there is one. We need a microphone being sent, and there's another one coming there, so we take time indeed. So here at the front, it's hard to see with the light, but...
Oh, the microphone is not working.
I could bring it. I could bring mine. This works.
Okay, this is maybe tangentially related, but the whole process of having screens in the two corner and you standing up here, to me, would affect eye gazes. And I was even just wondering, as a speaker, if you see any gazes at you or people are moving in various corners. This whole process now, to me, it seems like the screen should be behind the speaker so that eye gazes could be coordinated in some sort, which made your little activity work really well because our eyes were all on here and you could do whatever you wanted on the screen. But it seems disconcerting to me as a speaker not to have any eyes on you, but in corners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's lots of research on split attention, which means that the person receiving has to connect two different places, information from two different places. And that's an example that you have the presenter and you have the slides. Something that happens a lot in classrooms is presentation on computer screen. And I've been looking with the kind of conscious awareness of attentional processes that if the teacher is sitting behind the desk and manipulating computer and things happen on the screen, so pointing with the mouse, it's very different experience for the students compared to student-teacher working at the either interactive whiteboard or working at the traditional board and pointing with hand. I think there's lots of difference with how the person doing the facilitating or scaffolding and the visual attention is directed by the student. So I think it's very bad practice for the teacher to stay far away from the screen that the students are supposed to look at. And that's kind of something that they don't always think when they set up the technology in classrooms.
There was one at the back, and there's a microphone there now.
Hello. One of my questions was with gaze, there's often cultural ways of gazing, and I was wondering how that would impact in the maths class, whether you would get different responses in different places, or what you think about that.
Okay, I think one of the things that is clearly culturally normative is how long can you look at someone. And what we saw that while there's many times that the students and teachers look at each other's faces, they are typically very short. So I don't think that really comes as an issue. So intensive staring at another person is something where cultural norms come into play, but that's not something that happens at all often. I think the only cases are when teacher is having a presentation and the student is following the teacher intensively, that they might have, but then that's kind of the part of the cultural norm that the students are supposed to be looking attentive and to be watching the teacher. So I don't think there really is any cultural issue that would be here highly relevant, but I might be missing something that's either obvious or less obvious.
Hello, Markku. Thank you very much indeed. Very, very interesting. I'm finding it. I'd like to take you back to your iceberg image. And so I can learn where someone is looking, and I might or might not be able to deduce something about their attention. But how far down below the water surface do you think eye tracking can help us with?
I don't think it can help us much further. I think there are great depths in our sub or pre-conscious processing where we can go, but I think eye tracking can help us a little bit deeper than with other methods or with many other methods. I think there are some other methods that also help us to go a little bit deeper than the surface. But I don't think it's going to be kind of huge depths that we're able to cover there.
Okay, last chance. Last question. Oh, there is one. Yeah, someone's coming to you.
First of all, thank you very much, Professor Markku, for the presentation. Question is regarding what we said about intentions. So we said that intentions indicate gaze before thinking. So we look at the problem element before thinking. Now, is it also possible that we thought or think first before looking at the problem elements, such as maybe along the arguments of certain movements or saccades can also be prepared by extrafoveal analysis?
That was a bit complex question. I'm not sure if I understood it properly, but we might have to continue it after the presentation. But the overall thing is that we only get partial information about intentions from the gaze analysis. So I would say that, you know, just general, yes, partly we do, partly we don't. But yeah, I'm not sure if I caught all the details, and that's actually some of the very fundamental research on nitric, and I don't think I know enough there without going to references to be able to answer that. Anyway, but yeah, partly.
Thank you.
Okay, then we're concluding that bit. I want to ask Christina to come to the stage as well, and an applause for both Markku and Christina. So thank you very much.
So now the nice moment because we get the present.
Oh, thank you. Well, and it's time to go to the conference closing now, so we will go right away with that.
No problem. Apágalo, apágalo.
Distinguished guests, respected speakers, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the closing ceremony of the 45th Conference of the International Group of Psychology of Mathematics Education, PME45. First of all, we would like to thank each and every one of you for participating in this conference. It has been a pleasure to have your presence this week, both those who have attended in person and those who have done it online. We hope you have learned and enjoyed as much as we have. It has been two very difficult years for all of us, but at last we have been able to hold an on-site PME at the same way as the years before the pandemic. From the local committee, we have prepared a video with some photos of this week. I hope you like it.
now it's time for the closing remarks. Let's begin with Professor Zeneida Fernandez, Chair of the PME45.
Okay, so thank you. I would like to start to say thank you, all of you, for your participation in PME45. Those who are here in Alicante and those who have participated also online. Thank you on behalf of the local organizing committee to show during these days responsibility as a community, in taking care of each other, using masks, testing. We really appreciate it. After 3 years working on PME45, we have arrived at the end. And now I have only words of gratitude to all the people who have supported us in this journey. Thanks to the IC again for giving us this opportunity. It has been a great opportunity for Spanish mathematics education community. This has been evidenced by the 87 participants and by the number of Spanish contributions, research report, OC, PP this year. I think that PME conference has been a lever for our research community for the future. In fact, I am sure that soon we are able to see an increase of visibility of the Spanish research in international context. And also that the new research will impact and help to improve the mathematics teaching and mathematics teacher education in Spain. Thanks to the APC, the past president, Markku Hannula, the new president, Wim van Doren, the vice president, Arina Buse, Michal Ayalon. I wish you all my best for organizing PME46. Van Genchoy, Nuria Planas, Ángel Gutiérrez, and Salvador Linares for all your work, time, and support during this year. I would like also thank the support of University of Alicante and the different institutions that help us in organizing some social events. Finally, I would like to give a special thanks to all my colleagues from the Department of Innovation and Didactic Training. I am going to try not forget any name. Pere Ibars, Juanma González, Ángela Buform, Patricia Pérez, Javier Monge, Melania Bernabeu, Salva Castillo, Cristina Zorrilla, Paloma Santonja, Julia Valls, Mar Moreno, José Rovira, Sebastián Miras, Copelia Marco, Javier Fernández, Loli Moreno, and Rosa Aquiles. I would like also to say thank you to other colleagues from other departments and universities and friends. Álvaro García, Eloísa Montero, Gloria Sánchez Matamoros, María Martínez, Beatriz Navarro, Rosabel Martínez, Raúl Berenguer, and Francisco Pradas. And students that they have helped us, all of us, during this week. Macarena Sirven, Jorge Vázquez, Rasel Perrington, María Iglesias, Terebel Ramón, Ana Martínez, Ana Jerez, and Irene Vicens. Thank you for your time, all your support, and for making this conference possible. From the local organizing committee, we hope that PME45 conference had been fruitful and you depart with new ideas for future research, with new collaborations and colleagues. And we hope you had enjoyed our university, our city during this week. Safe journey home, and see you in next PME.
Thank you very much, Professor Zeneida Fernandez, for your closing remark. So now we count on the presence of Professor Jody Hunter, who will take the stage to announce the PME47, which will be held in New Zealand in 2024.
Kia ora, kia rana, talofa lava, bulavanaka, whakalofa lahi atu, and warm Pacific greetings on behalf of New Zealand. So PME conference in 2024 will be held in the city of Auckland, New Zealand, which is the largest Pacific city in the world. And we hope that you will be able to join us in our beautiful country to enjoy learning about our culture and seeing the beautiful sightseeing that you can see in New Zealand. The dates will be the 17th of July until the 21st of July, following on from ICME being held in Sydney. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Jody Hunter, for your presentation. So now is the time to give way to Professor Michal Ayalon, the next chair of the PME46, which will be held in 2023 in Haifa, Israel.
Hello, everyone, and we are very happy, Rosa Laikin and me, Michal Ayalon, to invite you to the, I cannot believe that I'm saying this word already, but to invite you to the next PME conference in the University of Haifa in Israel. Okay, yes, so as I said before, we are very happy and excited to invite you to the 46th PME conference that will be held in our university, in Haifa University in Israel, on July 16 to 2023. And I'm saying it on behalf of the members of our local scientific committee, Michal Tabach, Boris Koichu, Lori Rubel, Rosa, and myself. And this group of mathematics educators from various universities and colleges from all around Israel who joined to the efforts to organize the conference as the best as we can.
Okay, if the video was not enough, I will try to convince you that it was coming to University of Haifa. We have very beautiful museum. So if the conference will be boring, you will have time to spend in the museum. And this is still the museum. You can see that we have also archaeological and arts part. The view from the university is breathtaking, really, from each point of the university. It's 15 minutes from university by bus to the beaches, so you can take bus and if you are bored going, but I hope the conference will be so exciting that nobody will go to the bus and to the museum. Also, we have the biggest library in Israel, and we are planning to organize, for those who will come earlier to Israel, we will organize some tours in the country, and also after the conference there will be possibility to order these tours. And during the those are before and after, and those were during the conference. So during the conference we will try to organize tours which are not far from the University of Haifa, not more than 1 hour drive, and other excursions can be more long. Okay.
Yeah. So just I would like to emphasize this point because especially that we know that we have the CERMA before the PME. So we really thought about it, how to make it maybe easier for people to come, if they are able, of course, to come to both conferences. So we plan to support and organize tours for those who come before the PME, and also, of course, for those who want to stay afterwards, and to various places around Israel, like the Dead Sea and Masada and Jerusalem and the Negev. So also not in the surrounding of Haifa University, to which we can visit during the conference, but to other places all around Israel. And also for the ones who prefer to work, we have plenty of conference rooms and spaces available for collaborative work before and during and after the conference. So again, for those of you who want to come to collaborate, work together, you can even write to me beforehand, and I will make sure to have that you will have your own place to sit and work. So this is it, and thank you, Sineida, and all your wonderful team for this conference, and looking forward to see you next year.
So thank you very much, Professor Michal Ayalon, for your presentation. So next, I invite Professor Wim van Doren, the President of the International Group for the Psychology of Mathematical Education, to deliver a closing remark.
Okay, we have a lot to look forward to. That's quite clear. And we have also something very nice to look back at, which is a really wonderful conference. We had good exchanges of ideas, good interactions, and so on. So thanks to everybody for contributing, actually, all in your own way. And I noted one word down quite repeatedly in my notes, just on observing participants, and that is the word eager. We were all eager to come to this conference, to exchange ideas, to talk about research, to learn from each other, and yes, also eager to see each other again in real life, to feel each other, and yesterday at the dance floor I can think even smell each other, but that's another note. So just quickly a round of applause for ourselves, for everybody here. Well done. Okay. A minor side note, we are all good at giving compliments to each other, and that's important, but they may not always be what they seem to be. And I will be giving a quote from somebody I think is still in the room, but I'll keep it anonymous, so the person might know. One day at the conference I heard the compliment being said, "I really liked the quality of your paper." That's a very nice compliment. And the person who received the compliment was happy, and then there came a little bit after that, and she meant the quality of the paper on which the poster was printed. So that's slightly different. So beware when you get compliments. Just a warning. Okay. When I came here, and I think we all came here with high expectations, but particularly I did. I know Seneda. Already, as a young doctoral student, I will not tell how long that is ago that you were a young doctoral student, but you came to our research group, again, eager to learn, to work hard, to do collaborative research and so on. So hardworking and so on, ambitious. A few years later, one of the MCs, Juanma, visited us with the same atmosphere. And so I knew, actually when I came here, I suggested at some time, oh, it would be a nice place to do PME, and then you were laughing, ha 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 ha, and now we are here and look at what we had. This was such a wonderful conference, and so now we see we were right in having high expectations because you managed to do this. You had a stunning team. They were all very committed to giving us the best possible conference experience, and we felt welcome in every possible way. Again, thank you. Yeah, applause. And just like before, I have small critical notes. If there's one thing I have to blame, it is the extra kilos of body weight I take home for all the good food that we had here. So that's a minor point. And then the other one was my happy hour tickets were not accepted in the festival in front of the education building. Some point of improvement, but okay. To go to the finalizing of that, we have a very committed vice president, and he brought some gifts, and actually he's been dragging more than 20 kilos of handcrafted gifts from India throughout Europe, especially for everybody who helped here in the local organization. And if you're lucky, you may even find some sweat of our vice president on your particular gift. So I want to ask to come to the stage to all the colleagues and teachers and students who helped and the local organizers. So that's basically everybody with the orange ribbon, excluding me. So Paloma, Alvaro, Maria, Beatriz, Rosabel, Raul, Francisco, Macarena, Jorge, Russell, Maria, Terbel, Anna, Erin, Maria, come to the stage already, and there are more people to follow, and give them a very high round of applause. And also the local organizing committee, Nuria, Angel, Salvador is still ill, I think, Melania, Juanma, Cristina Pere, Mar, Angela, Javier, Patricia, Julia, Capelia, Javier, Sebastian, Eloisa, Jose, and Gloria. And of course, Seneda. Please come to the stage. I hope I didn't forget anybody, but come here. there are still people working behind the stage, but they will get their gift as well. And I thank you again for them. Okay. And after those words, I hereby can declare PME45 closed and welcome to PME46. So see you next year.
Thank you very much, Professor Wim van Doren, for your closing remark, and also Arin Damose for your gifts.
We have arrived at the end, so ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for participating in this edition of the PME held in Alicante. We hope to see you again next year in Haifa. The University of Alicante will always be your home. Have a safe trip back. Thank you very much.